Now we're off.
Oh, right. Are you ready now, Mr. Sam?
Yeah, I was born ready for this.
Well, apart from the minor technical fuck up we just had.
I will
Anyway,
take no insults from you about tech. Thank you.
no. So you're the tech man, and I'm just, what did I say a minute ago? I'm here to just be fabulous. Is that what I said?
Yep. So don't mess up.
Don't mess up. I'm just going to be here being fabulous. Welcome. Hello. What was that face for?
Nothing.
Git?
Just waiting for you to hit the note. That was all.
No, that will never happen. I do not have a singing voice. Oh, do you know what? Do you know what the school have done? Do you know what the school have done, Mr. Sam? I forgot to tell you about this.
I have no idea.
Well, last week Pearl came home with a clarinet, and she keeps wondering why it doesn't work. The dog wants to leave home. And do you know what happened yesterday? Chester came out of school with, can you guess?
A violin.
Fucking recorder.
Oh, mate, but that could be worse. But I mean, look, violin is a beautiful instrument, but for those who are beginners, do you know, actually, I was restringing my guitar yesterday, and this is amazing. Do you want to hear something incredible? Because I've been
always
playing guitar since I was about 7. So there I am, restringing this guitar. And I get to the end and I think, this isn't right. What's going on? So I'd taken the, basically the E string, the thin strings, right? I'd crossed them over. So they were doing this. So the bottom two, they went like a crisscross because I just without thinking about it, I just strung them up wrong anyway. But yeah, it's not that funny. Unless if you're a musician, you might laugh about that. It's a bit of a schoolboy error. But there we
I
go.
really hope that Sam edits this out, and if he doesn't, I apologise. Let's go back to the recorded story. It's far more amusing.
I never edit anything out. Well, look, I'm glad that you're getting tortured by recorder. Is it Frere Jacques? What are they playing?
I don't think he knows how to play anything. He just blows into it. Like, imagine a load of kids coming out of school yesterday. There's about 10 of them with a recorder for the first time. It was hell. And I'm like looking at his teacher like, thanks. Thank you. I've got a headache.
Teacher was looking at you with a smile on their face, like, yeah.
One of them went to me, get yourself some of those earplugs, you know? Yeah.
I got a link for I'll send you a link for a good set of them for when I go out partying. Keep the old ears protected.
It's important. Anyway, so we were going to have a podcast or something, you know, like we get together to chat about stuff, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
So for October, alcohol experiment, people stopping drinking for a period, booze break. What
is that it? See you next week.
So hopefully, well, not hopefully, it doesn't matter really. People will be having some kind of sober October experience, and we wanted to talk to. There's a couple of episodes actually. This first one we want to talk about who are you doing it for. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're also going to come back and we're going to talk about the kind of experience that you might be having. So the first one, who are you doing it for? And this came about because there can be lots of reasons that people take a booze break, and in particular something like Sober October, which is it's always been a charity thing, hasn't it? It's always been.
Yeah, I don't know. I think so. I think that's how it started out, didn't it?
So there'll be a bunch of people that will be going into Sober October primarily as a support for charity. I think I'm about to be interrupted by a small child.
I wondered why you were pausing there. I was just looking at the birds. I'm pointing for no reason. The birds on the card over by your standing desk, they're still there. So yes, and that's obviously an amazing and very lovely and noble thing to do. We were just talking about how I think actually last year we recorded a podcast called "The Dangers of Sober October," so you could listen to it listen to it next year. I was going to say you could listen to it when
Let's listen to it like, in 2047.
This is an absolute shit show. But yeah, we were basically talking about how there were lots of things, but it's really good to do it for yourself too. It's really good to do it for yourself too, because if you're purely doing it for someone else or a charity or something like that, That can be really good, but there's so much for you to learn for yourself too. So absolutely do these things for charity. I think that's a really cool thing. But there's a lot to learn for yourself as well, right?
Yeah. But what a wonderful thing, whether it's dry July, sober October, dry January, all of these months that have gained some level of, I was going to say, notoriety. It's bringing a lot more people into the conversation, and we hear about, you know, the sober curious movement. Like it's wonderful that more people are, even if it is like, even if you're not thinking about yourself and any longevity, but you're just like, no, I'm gonna do this for charity, and it's going to be painful for the month, and I'm going to be really miserable about it, because like, what a thing, like, this is what I'm doing for charity, it's like a real challenge. Well, it's still bringing you into the conversation, it's still giving you the opportunity to experience what we talk about and a bunch of other people in the sober community talk about. That, like, I never ever would have thought that living alcohol free was a complete life upgrade. I just never would have believed that at all. And funnily enough, I remember a few years ago, before I stopped drinking, I remember a friend of mine doing Sober October. And I was like, she's a fucking champ. There's no way I can do that. Like, no chance. I'm not going to be able to do that, but I'll happily support her, because that's a really great thing. And all the way through, like, she was posting on her social media, and we're all encouraging her on. But I'm thinking, like, there is no way I'd want to be doing that. That sounds like hell to me.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because it's really great that it brings people into the conversation. And I think a lot of people might be surprised how, like, a number of different things. We're going to talk about this, that it's harder than they thought, then it's easier than they thought, like a number of different experiences that people could be having. But it is kind of interesting. It's funny to zoom out just for a second and consider that stopping drinking for a month in the eyes of society is such a challenge that it's something that people will donate money for. And I know it's normalized now. It's very normal, but back like 8, 9, 10 years ago, there weren't that many people doing it. And it was seen as like this ginormous thing. And that's kind of funny, because I always think, you know, if someone said to you, yeah, I'm not going to eat this for a month, or I'm not going to do that for a month, but like, well, yeah, you know, it's
So
a month,
what?
30 days, like, big deal. But it's so normalized that we stop, you know, that we drink either daily or weekendly, or, you know, so often a month, that, yeah, not doing this thing for 30 days is a big deal, enough that people will donate money for it. So I mean, that's one of the things behind us kind of saying, you know, have a look and see if there's something for you to see as well, even if your goal is to drink less, or even if your goal is to, you know, moderate, whatever it might be. It can be an amazing launch pad. And I think the framework and the way that you go into it is very, very powerful. Like, if you have a story of, oh, this is going to be really difficult, I'm going to have to grin and bear it, all that kind of stuff, you know, we tend to see that stuff kind of created in our experience. But if we're just completely open, no expectations, doing it for ourselves and for charity, raise some money for something we care about, and perhaps get some insights into something, and maybe we'll learn that, hey, I don't need to drink when I do this, or I don't need to drink when I do that. Like, it's not actually necessary for me to do those things in order for me to have a good time. Yeah, it's quite sort. Look at this. I'm well slept as well. I don't know what's happened.
I was just thinking, the question that came to me when you were talking was like, what's the weirdest thing that you've ever done while drinking?
Oh God. Well, I got on. I mean, weirdest.
Yeah.
I told you, and I've shared the story of me standing on that stool in the middle of that pub and calling everybody a bunch of.
And most people do things like that, though, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, what activity? Because you just said, like, oh, I don't need to do this. I don't need to drink when I do this thing. I don't need to drink when I do that thing.
Well, I just mean things like, you know, for me, it used to be normal to. In fact, it didn't. I didn't used to sort of drink before the cinema. For me, like, I'd get sleepy and stuff. But I knew a lot of people that would. They always seemed a bit odd to me. Like, go and just drink while watching a film, or like, oh, look who's here, hello mate.
His finger up his nose as well.
It's going to be here forever now. This.
Can I charge this for you?
Yeah.
So you're interrupting a podcast episode To ask mommy to charge a Nintendo whilst you're picking your nose.
Right, I'm gonna pause it so that you can go and find the cable for that then.
Sounds it's dire emergency. Well, he stopped picking his nose now, and he's onto watermelon and a Nintendo. Right, where were we? Bloody hell. F my life. What were we talking about?
Oh yeah, so doing it for someone else. Do you know what? It's also worth talking about while we're talking about this, who we're doing it for, because we framed it with the Sober October thing. I think there's a lot to talk about around just the general, if we are deciding to take a month off or a year off or a lifetime off of booze, it's really important that we're invested for ourselves first and foremost. Sure, other people around us are going to benefit. They're going to get a lot from it. But the truth is, if we're not quite ready and we're doing it essentially for someone else, for our partner or for whoever, it can lead to the buildup of resentment and stuff like that, because and it's not always, it's just not always that healthy a reason to do something, I don't think. So I don't know if I think that's worth talking about while we're on the topic, because it's much broader than just doing a month of Sober October, right?
Yeah, I'll hear it often from, well, women in particular, mums. I'll hear them say like, "Oh, I'm doing this for my kids," which again is like it's a really noble and honourable thing, but that can't be the only reason, because it won't stick. It's like you inadvertently make it more difficult for yourself. And what you're saying about this introduction of a thread of resentment, I mean, that's it gets in the way of your connection. So if your idea is, well, I'm going to stop drinking because I want to be more connected to my children, then it's really important that you reinforce that with doing it ultimately for yourself. It's like doing it for yourself, for your children, because otherwise it's going to serve to get in the way of that connection.
Yeah, and I mean, the really, really cool thing is, or one of the really cool things is that that's all taken care of. So we kind of live in a society that does the whole, you got to put others first and all that kind of stuff. And like, I get why we think in that way, but I think being selfish is kind of it's a bit of a dirty word, isn't it? But the truth of it is being kind of consciously selfish, like putting yourself forwards, looking after yourself, self-care, stopping drinking for you when the time is right, all that kind of stuff. All that other stuff takes care of itself anyway. And you're much more likely to find these things stick. You're much more likely to, and by default, your kids are gonna, you're more present for your partner, you're more present, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I think the other thing that the other issue that kind of occurs to me now is people are weird when it comes to booze and drugs and stuff, because they're often addicted, even though they wouldn't necessarily admit it, or they have a very kind of imbalanced relationship with it. So take, for example, the person whose spouse, partner, husband, wife, whatever is applying pressure for that person to drink. Now that person, say they fuck up, they do something that they feel really bad about, and they're like, shit, I really ought to stop, right? So they do it first and foremost for their partner. But at some point down the road, their partner, who is still drinking, then does that thing that people do, which is, they I don't know, they do something, or they throw some words out, or they suggest that they're different, and that, well, of course I can keep drinking because you've got a problem and I don't, or something. And then all of a sudden, everything just starts falling apart, because we're not standing on a foundation of stable ground, like, because we can't control what other people are up to, and a lot of what they're up to and what they're saying is based on fear. It's not coming from a place of growth. But if we're in that foundation, if we know why we're doing it, we'll find ourselves much more stable, even if people around us are doing things that we would rather them not do, like try and coerce us into drinking or whatever it might be, because they're scared that they don't have their drinking partner anymore, or it's infinite the amount of things that might be happening. So I think without that foundation, without that knowing of who you're doing it for, you can end up feeling like you're in quicksand a bit, and because we can't control what other people do and what they say, and their values and their opinions and all that kind of stuff. We can't do that. And yeah, so I think that's maybe something worth noting.
It is. Good job, Mr. Sam. It is worth noting because the relationships are sticky, right? They're sticky for the very reason that you mentioned. And that, like, we would all love to have some stable ground. And the only stable ground that you're ever going to have is that connection with yourself.
Sure.
So by all means, have these, wonderful and honorable intentions to show up, be it for charity, for your children, for your partner, for your friends, but root that in the foundation of being there for yourself first, not abandoning yourself. And it doesn't have to be like some mad declaration. Like, even I remember going through the alcohol experiment, and at the beginning of it, I was kind of marveling at these, it was Annie and Scott on the videos, and I was kind of marveling at these two individuals, like, so what they like, they don't drink at all, like ever, not even on special occasions. Like, still, like, it's funny how your mind works. Like, you sure you just, like, because they haven't explicitly said that they don't drink, but presumably they don't, like, ever, like unicorns, which just seems really funny now. But when we first start looking in this direction, it's too much. It's too much to think about forever. You don't need to think about forever, and it doesn't matter because it's not really about alcohol anyway. So just like rooting yourself in true self-care. Like, this is all about care for yourself first. As Sam said, everything else is just going to follow naturally. And ironically, if you can go into it with real care for yourself, compassion for yourself, and an open mind, a beginner's mind, curious about what's going to happen without any kind of no level of like force around a particular outcome, then ironically you will have a better outcome, because that ease will pave the way for you to have the best experience that you can have. And that's going to mean it be more pleasurable, and in all likelihood earning more money for charity, or giving a better result in terms of how you want to show up with your family. So it's kind of subtle stuff, this, but it fundamentally shifts everything.
Yeah. So I think that's why it's important to have the discussion, and because it's never sort of, if you catch yourself halfway through a journey and you realize, maybe I'm not doing this for myself, just sit down and get clear with yourself about why this would be amazing, why it would be an amazing thing for you. You don't have to like get to the end, start drinking, and then kind of figure out why it's good for you. Like, it's nothing more than sitting down with a coffee and just thinking about it, and kind of setting an intention or realigning yourself, however you want to think about it. And yeah, you're right. It is kind of subtle, but I think it is really important, actually, because in one orientation, we're sort of like outward looking to other people. And that would seem as if we love our kids, which obviously we do, if you love your kids, if you love your partner, whatever, like, obviously being outward looking, it looks like a very powerful thing to do. And maybe we've been trained into thinking that being inward looking and putting ourselves first isn't the right thing to do, but actually it's the way the world works. We experience life from the inside out. So actually turning in that direction is a really powerful thing to do. And then everybody will benefit from that. And also it occurs to me that if anyone's thinking, well, bloody hell, I wish I could do that, I've got a funny feeling that not that long ago, we put together a podcast about I can't remember if it was called Putting Ourselves First, but it was around self-care and extending what we mean by that, and how to make space for ourselves, particularly if we're kind of, mum who always puts herself last on the list because, everybody else needs to get seen to first, or dad or whoever, right? Like, I think can seem like something that would be like, oh, well, that's all well and good, but I have no idea how to do that. There's a couple of discussions not long ago on the podcast that you can go check out that'll open doors for that. Because one of the reasons we may be doing it for other people is because we don't, at a deep level, we don't feel like we can value ourselves to do it for ourselves yet. But that's a really powerful journey, because you're inherently valuable. Like, just being here, just the fact that you're here means that you're worth as much as anybody else is. And so you're absolutely worth whatever it is, stopping drinking for, or, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter. And again, I guess this again, and I'm going to say the word again, noting that this is not just for booze, it's for everything, right? So whether you're going to go to the gym, whether you're going to lose weight, whether you're going to do all this stuff, it's great to do that stuff for yourself, because otherwise, who are you defining yourself by? You're defining yourself by the thoughts of other people, and you might just, I mean, I did that for a long time and I lost myself in the process. Makes sense, right? Because if we don't have that connection to why we're doing stuff for us, we just become this collection of other people's ideas of who we should or shouldn't be.
But the cool thing is that even if you don't feel that you have that connection, the really fucking good news is you do. You do. There's a lady came onto a coaching call a little while ago with me, and it was a really moving call. She was very, very honest, very vulnerable, and was basically saying that she didn't value herself at all. And not only that, but she kind of hated herself. You know, she was in that spot that I'm sure a lot of us can relate to at some point. And within the discussion, the coaching conversation that I had with her, the suggestion I made was that that was like her biggest and most radical act of self-care. Because if she really didn't value herself, if she really didn't love herself deeply, then she wouldn't have shown up on that call. She wouldn't have raised her hand. She wouldn't have asked a question. She wouldn't have put herself into a very vulnerable, exposed position. So that just shows that even when at a cognitive level, you feel that you are really disconnected from yourself and you can't take care of yourself and you can't love yourself, at a very deep level, you do. And this is, it's borne out in the actions that ultimately you take, because that drive isn't coming from the personality bit of you. It's coming from somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. A really powerful truth more than an interesting point. I often say to people when they're in the middle of a coaching program and they're kind of beating on themselves because they, you know, I could be doing better by now. I should be doing better by now. You know, all the stuff that we hear. And it's like, yeah, but you're here, right? You signed up for this thing. You invested money in this thing. You're here. Like, you can't get away from that. Something guided you to this place. Because you could very easily not be here. You could very easily be where you were before. And even if you're listening to these podcasts, even if that's the only thing, in air quotes, that you're doing right now, and even if you feel like you don't value yourself, like Ellie said, you know, just because you feel something, that doesn't mean it's true, actually. Like, there's something much, much deeper going on, which is always guiding us. And if you zoom out and look at the patterns of your life, like you'll see it at play. Oh, I love that, mate. I don't know if that feels like a really nice kind of like short and sweet podcast. That was cool. There I am, just ending it. Maybe you've got something else to say.
I kind of like where we've left it, because that I would love people to just let that permeate, because I'm sure we've all been there where, you know, you're upset with the way that you've handled something, or, you know, having cross words with somebody, and you can so easily get into beating yourself up and seemingly enhancing that disconnection. And to know that you are always connected, and even when you least like yourself, you most love yourself at the same time. It's something worth contemplating.
Love it.
Right, I better go see if this boy's finished picking his nose and charge his Nintendo.
All right, team. See you soon. Bye.